I'm not kidding you. Anybody could have won but me. I could have won. You know, like it's just how do you adjust the challenge, right? It's not even just about cooking too.
Yeah.
It's about how can you go into this challenge and get through it?
Is that the psych eval portion of them wanting to know that you
I think they just don't want you to murder everybody on the show when
so
Tom tells you.
I was going to say drama on reality television seems like they want a little psychosis.
They want crazy, but they don't want psycho.
Right. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, pulling back the curtain.
All right.
Episode 15, I'm told.
Wow.
So
15.
Apparently. Nice round number for you. Chad White.
That's me.
What is your title? What do you go by? Are you a restaurateur? Are you a chef? Are you
man of many hats?
Man of many hats.
Or a man that wears many hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, when it boils down to it, I'm a cook that worked really hard. And now I own a few restaurants. Did a couple cool things like being on Top Chef.
I heard
that definitely elevated
want to get into that,
some opportunities in my life.
Sure.
But yeah, just born and raised in Spokane, Washington. Joined the military on 9/11. Was stationed in San Diego. Had a good amount of rail-wounded, hard work, kind of mentorship from, you know, my family being in the farming business and spending my summers on a dairy farm to being in the military and finding a great deal of discipline there and hard work. And then being in the culinary world, which has no lack of hardships and hard work and dedication that's needed to kind of get through those long, grueling days in 100-degree kitchens. But I just, you know, I've always been an artist, and somehow I found a way to bridge the gap between art and food, and fell in love with the industry that I'm in and the people that I get to serve. It's really all about relationships, right? Mm-hmm. When you sit down at a table and you're breaking bread with people, you know, you really get to know people that way.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating, and I get excited about it when I'm in my restaurant and I'm able to meet and greet people at their table after they've had an incredible experience. But, you know, that has its ups and downs. Sometimes you get met with some pretty fierce negativity when you miss the mark. But, I mean, that's all part of being a, you know, I don't know, let's call it an entrepreneur. You know, the ups and downs, the peaks and the valleys.
You put yourself out there, literally and figuratively, and you're gonna get some brushbacks for sure.
Yeah.
Amazingly, the second guy with the dairy farming background on the podcast.
Really?
Wow. 15 in.
Was he out of Addie, Washington?
Actually, it was Wisconsin.
Oh,
like yeah.
Okay, back east.
Yeah. So, a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Chad, which is awesome. So, grew up here in Spokane. Did you know before 9/11 that you might join the forces, or was that triggering event where you looked in the mirror and thought life's going to take a different course?
Yeah, never a thought in my mind.
Yeah.
Woke up, to be completely honest, a little hungover, and walked out in the living room.
That's honest.
My stepbrother was, you know, watching the TV, and he's like, "Dude, are you seeing this?" And I'm like, "This isn't real." And then we realized it was, and he played football in high school. He's a bit older than I was, and I said, "Dude, I think I'm going to join the military." I'm kind of pissed, right? Like I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I've got this
not laughing
whole,
at the moment, obviously, by any stretch of the imagination. I'm still just picturing you in your PJs, a little hungover, making major life decisions. But maybe that's how they all actually
I was definitely in a onesie.
Onesie?
It was a onesie PJ situation.
It was the summers, I remember. We'll talk about your circulation later in the podcast. So, no, in all seriousness, so you're sitting there watching this with your brother. You're having this conversation. What was his response to that?
Well, he was just like, "Dude, I'd be right there with you if I didn't have a pin in my ankle." You know, and I was like, "Well, somebody's got to do it. I'm going to go." And I got to the recruiter's office, and there was
same day.
Wow. My job was closed for the day.
I mean, I think I remember looking in the mirror and not knowing what to make of it.
Yeah.
Didn't have
shock,
whatever.
Right?
Yeah. No, it was shock. I mean, it was our generation's Kennedy moment for sure.
So I decided I'd go down to the recruiter's office and just kind of check it out. And the line to get into the Marines was around the block, and the Navy was short. And I was like, I know myself better than anybody else. If I give myself any opportunity to talk myself out of it, I will. And so I joined the Navy.
Wow, good for you. How long were you in the service?
I went in. I shipped out for boot camp January of 2002, and because there was a long list of people trying to get in, and then I made my exit December of 2006.
Okay,
so just a little under 4 years.
Did you enjoy your time? Would that be the right word? Did you
it.
find it of value?
I loved it. There was a big, it's camaraderie, right? So you're working every single day, and I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, there's areas of it that just
one or
really
two
suck.
moments where you thought I should have stayed in the onesie and not gone down to the recruiter's office.
Oh, the minute you get off the bus in Great Lakes and you have a guy screaming at you for no damn reason. Let's just that was a real quick moment where I went, maybe this was not a great idea at all. Because I'm like, dude, listen, I'm here to support.
Right.
We're here for the same reasons. Like, come on, let's be a team.
Yeah.
And he's like, get off the bus, you freaking jerks. And I'm like, I never did anything wrong in my life.
Right.
I mean, my mom might disagree with that, but nothing
to
the point of getting yelled at.
What did your mom say?
Well, my mom was just super stoked that I wasn't going to the Marines.
Sure.
So that
Fair.
There was that. But she was also very stoked that I was heading towards a direction that would provide a little bit more discipline. I was never a bad kid. I was the kid that got caught before making any terrible decisions, right? Like on the phone with my buddies, hey, for junior prom, we're going to sneak out. Hey, I'm going to be at Matt's house. Matt's going to be at my house, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be great. We're going to rent a room at the DoubleTree, which is now Marabou. We're going to get drunk. We got a bunch of 99 bananas and some Mad Dog 2020. And yeah, man, it's going to be great. And my mom's on the other end going, grounded.
She's in the room when you get there.
Yeah. So I was also the guy that would butt dial my mom while telling a terrible story at a bar.
Well, that's it. That's it. To go too far down. But what were you thinking you were going to do before that moment? What was the plan then?
I was working for the DoubleTree Hotel.
You were how old at this point?
I was 18.
Okay.
I was actually working for the DoubleTree Hotel on Sullivan, and I was a banquet setup guy, and then I was a part-time car salesman because my family was in the car business.
Okay.
My mom has been a finance manager for many years. My grandfather's owned many dealerships here in the city, and so I've been around car lots my entire life, from lot boy to detail guy all the way up to a car salesman. And so I wasn't quite sure where I was at. I knew I always wanted to do something in art, but I had nothing pinned down. I had no college plans.
No pun intended.
Yeah, I was just kind of like going through the motions.
So you can draw as well. You're artistic in that measure. You paint, music. What's your artistic talent outside of food?
I mean, my girlfriend thinks that I hum pretty good in the shower.
Yeah.
But I think she's just being real nice.
Probably.
Actually, it's funny. All of my family sing very well. I actually sang in Kirk Franklin's
then you got
choir for this cool thing over in Kirkland when I was a teenager. So yeah, I mean, I can sing, but I'm not like my sister who sings for Gonzaga for their national anthems.
Family of talent.
But yeah, art, drawing, painting, all those things. I got a lot of that artistic nature from my grandmother, who's an illustrator and a painter. But I was just kind of that kid that couldn't follow instructions. Like, I got this idea in my mind, I'm an artist, I'll do what I want. So I was the kid that was getting like D's and C's in my art class, but yet had better skill than anybody in the class.
That happened. I think, school, my dad grew up educator, or spent his career as an educator, and obviously school can do a lot of wonderful things for people, but the entrepreneurs that's a tough deal, right? Because you don't fit in a box.
No.
And how do you facilitate that and keep the dreamers who don't have the wherewithal separate from the people who do but just need a little bit of a direction? So you get out in 2006. Then what?
Yeah, so I was actually still in the military at the time, and I had an opportunity to do an externship at the Hotel del Coronado. And this was like a really
Awesome
big,
place.
pivotal moment in my life, right? Because I was thinking, how do I transfer from this giant floating cafeteria to...
Did you cook on the boat?
Yeah, I was a cook in the Navy.
Okay.
That was the only thing I qualified for besides chip and paint. So
What would have been the other alternatives?
I could have been a fireman, an airman, or a seaman. Seaman, they chip paint, swab decks. Fireman, clearly put out fires.
Yeah.
And then airman, I'd basically be picking up FOB, which is like foreign objects on the flight deck, pretty much all day long.
So is that where you learned to cook? Did you know how to cook before
yeah.
then?
I mean, I cooked
Dabbled.
with my grandma here and there, but
Yeah.
nothing more than like scrambled eggs and the most rad grilled cheese you've ever had. But
Fair enough.
yeah, I really wasn't. I used to make orange Julius for girls. That was pretty rad.
Orange chili.
That's how I got all my
throwback
girlfriends.
there.
But yeah, no, I never thought that I'd be a cook. You
Yeah.
know, it was really just what I qualified for. So in the military, if you go in undesignated, where you're a fireman, seaman, or an airman, you have to spend X period of time in the military until you can actually take a test for a qualified rate, right? So you're already 2 years down the road behind, right? Whereas going in as a cook, I went from boot camp to a trade school, right? Learn how to cook. And then I go right into usually sea duty, which is what I did, where I'm attached to a ship. And then I'm on my way to being able to earn rank through time. And I went in as an E1. I had no college credits. I had, really bad ASVAB score. So I started as an E1, and by the time I got out, I was an E4.
Nice. So then you're at the hotel, externship.
Exactly. So the Navy was working with outside businesses to help allow sailors to cross decks into the civilian world, and how they could their military job could work in everyday person's job. So, hey, we're going to send you to the Hotel del Coronado. You've shown a lot of interest. You're more than just a cook in the Navy. There's a future for you. And this was probably more for the benefit of the military than showing that they could cross deck. It was more of, hey, these people are going to earn some skill sets, and then those can be applied to better the morale on our ship, right? Or gain a higher ranking through a better understanding of their trade. So I went there, and I was just fascinated by the kitchen, and being at this really cool fancy place. It's
a neat hotel.
I started in Garde Manger, and at the end of my shift, which was about 8 hours, they said, hey, you can go ahead and go home. I'm like, well, we spend 16 hours a day in our kitchens on the ship. Like, I'm not ready to go home. I want to learn more. And you guys just had me carve fruit for 8 hours, which I do every single day, twice as fast as your cooks who are union-based.
Yeah.
So can you show me something cool?
Yeah.
And the chef was like, yeah, go down there to Prince of Wales, which is their fine dining kitchen. And, just stay back. If they need help with some things, you can do that, but only if the chef says. Otherwise, you're just observing. And sure enough, somebody had called in sick. It was in the middle of November, right before Thanksgiving. And they're like, we need somebody to jump on the line. Can you follow instructions? And I was like, yeah, I think I could follow instructions. That's all I do.
If there's one thing that seems to have come out when we've had any of these podcasts with entrepreneurs, which again is just the truth. And again, I don't want to just pick on generations, but I will pick on people who maybe don't understand. There's so many people waiting for their moment, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to always making themselves available, putting themselves out there. They all want everything lined up. It's just not how life works, right?
Yeah,
so you were putting in how long? 8-hour days?
Yeah, I mean, at that moment,
and
we were
had
only
come
at 8
from
hours.
16 hours. So you could have gone home, played Mario Kart, done whatever the heck you were going to do. Instead, you're walking down, putting in some extra time, and your moment happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, right place at the right time, destined for success, constantly trying to do better. that's where I was at. There's too many kids nowadays who are just like, well, it'll come to me. And it's like, no, bullshit, it won't come to you. If you want it, you put in the extra hours. Clock out, keep working. Now, I know that's technically illegal, but you know what? Tons of people break laws in other ways. I'll work for free for knowledge.
We're okay with people breaking laws when there's actually negative consequences. Anybody who tries to break a law to better themselves, then that's when people really seem to get up in arms.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Anyway, side note. So then you get your shot.
Yeah, I got my shot. I jumped on the line. They had me cook vegetables for 8 different styles of dishes. Showed me how to do each one of them. You know, there's a little slip-ups here and there, but pretty much I did really well. I did well enough for them to recognize that I was better than their cook that they already had, that had been with the company for 10 years already. Mm-hmm. And so they offered me a job at the end of the day. And I said, I don't know if I could just peace out of the military. And I got 2 years or a year left, and they're like, well, see what you can do. We could work around your schedule, and I was like, I'm not on shore duty. I'm on sea duty. So, I'll be leaving at this time. And, the chef of the hotel was like, listen, I think this is a good opportunity for you. If you're really interested in it, you can continue to go down this road and that's fine. If you're a career guy in the military, but if you're really looking to get out, this could provide a good launch pad for you.
And the Navy agreed to let you out?
Yeah. So at that point, there was a lot of,
that swell was needed to let some people out.
Exactly. We had so many people join for 9/11. Then we realized that there really wasn't as big of a threat that they needed, 60 new ships out on the Gulf sending, missiles at people. Mm-hmm. So they were offloading. And, in most cases, they're trying to get rid of the cooks or even anybody in the military who are not cutting it. Mm-hmm. They're not there. They're not moving forward. And so I put in a request to get out, and they said, "Are you sure you want to get out? There's a billet up for the White House." And I talked to a couple of people who had worked in the White House, and they're like, "Listen, until you're E6, E7, you're just gonna be washing dishes. So if this is giving you an opportunity to go in this direction, that's great. But if you're looking to retire from the Navy, you should definitely go to the White House." And I talked to my wife at the time, and she's like, "No, we'd rather have you home." And so I took almost a $10,000 a year pay cut to exit the Navy. And
pay cuts are another part of entrepreneurship. We're just putting them out. So you got to work off hours for your moment.
Yep.
Should we writing these down into a book somewhere? Number 2, you almost always take a pay cut to follow your dream. Everyone's always wanting to only move forward, but no. There's some gravity to this, so sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. So
you take your pay cut.
So yeah, took the pay cut. I let the people know, like, hey, listen, I can't live off minimum wage, so we've got to meet somewhere in the middle. And they said, well, we'll pay you $13 an hour. You have the bones and whatnot to be a supervisor. We just need to teach you the skill because you're a little bit behind on that. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, not a problem.
This is still at the hotel?
This is at the hotel. Mm-hmm. And they said, but you're going to have to earn the jacket, right? The only way we can pay you $13 an hour is if we give you a chef title. Right? And so they gave me the chef title of Chef de Partie, but I had to earn the actual position itself. I was being paid for it in advance. And I went from having these people mentor me to now being their boss, like within a period of 6 to 8 weeks. And it caused hell. Yeah. It caused hell. I mean, I had been more hazed at the Hotel Del than I ever was when I was in the military.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, like what kind of things?
Just like people doing stupid things like putting Vaseline all over my locker.
In good fun or with some some ill will?
Pretty pissed off that I all of a sudden was now in charge of them when they were teaching me things that I had no clue about how to cook. And so, I mean, I could see how people would be a little bit frustrated by that. Sure. And my response to them is, well, work harder than me. I show up before you. I leave after you. Yeah. I'm earning my paycheck.
That's what they saw in terms of the supervisor capabilities, was that willingness to put in that time. Well, that's why you were there in the first place in terms of that kitchen, right?
And a lot of these people who are working in these union-based environments, they get to this point and they don't want to go past that because then they're no longer unionized.
Well, and to each their own. But I think everybody wants to live in their bubble but then hold other people back, right? Like just be cool with the, if you want to be an entrepreneur and a business person and have some of the, although maybe more illusion than reality, freedoms, potential wealth that, or it could come along with that, then don't complain about the time you got to put in, right?
Yeah.
If you don't want to put that time in, then don't complain about the lack of, the lack of
it's
always interesting to me on either side of that. I mean, everybody does it. It's not like it's necessarily on which side of the fence you fall. But there's always a price to be paid, right?
It was interesting. I had people spitting on my locker. I had people taking my knife, freezing it into a block of ice. I had people literally stealing from the company by throwing my product away that I would prep so I would be behind when I showed up. And the chef of the restaurant itself allowed it to happen as a lesson base for me.
So
right? Like almost like
somebody
allowing some
in an authority position saw what was going on
and just let it happen.
Yeah.
Right? As if they were just trying to let that skim kind of curdle over the top of the milk just so I could like put up with it, see how much I could handle. And they would put me in the most intense environments, where, the chef would be like, we clearly need an extra body today, but we're not going to put one on because we want to see if Chad can swim or drown. And it was tough. The Hotel Del was probably my hardest job I had ever had.
Yeah.
And once I was wearing that jacket that had my name on it and the chef title, that's when things got absolutely crazy, where they'd put me in charge of people who had been there for 20 years, and I had to tell them what to do and hold them accountable. And the chef would be like, what's going on? I'm like, well, this guy's not respecting me. He's not allowing me to tell him what to do. He's basically throwing me the middle finger, and he's like, you wanted this position. Figure it out.
So how did you figure it out? What did you figure out?
At that age.
What are a couple key takeaways? Were you combative? Did you try to grab a beer with them, and become buddies? Like what approach did you take? I'm sure it probably differed a little bit, but on the person, but there's got to be some gold in there that you could share.
It changed all over the place. I feel like I tried everything, and some people you just didn't win with. Some people were just out to get you.
Right.
But like the older gentleman, it was more of the road of like, listen, I have respect for you. You've taught me a lot up to this point. I have to get a job done, and I'm required to do X, Y, Z. And this can either be hard or it can be easy for both of us. Like, I'm looking to you. Maybe you can help me get there, right? And he's like, well, you're making more money than me. I was like, no, you've been working here for 20 years. You're making $27 an hour. I'm making $13, and I'm in charge of you. Do you understand what I'm doing right now?
Would you do this in the heat of the moment, or would you try to find someone off clock, if you will, or in a quiet moment?
If those opportunities arise, then yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's 1,000 employees at the Hotel Del.
How many were you in charge of?
19.
That's quite a few, yeah.
And in comparison to the military, I led 100-man working parties.
Sure.
The difference was
nobody was going
you follow rank.
Right.
And there's no question. It doesn't matter if I'm older than you, rank supersedes. When you get out into the civilian world, you have to be nice to people, right? If somebody talks back to you, you can't pull rank, right? Because then you're going to be in HR. Oh, he talked to me in a disrespectful manner, blah, blah. He's not even a union employee. And then all of a sudden you got the union reps there. You know what I mean? And all those things are in place. I'm not trying to like knock the unions. It's just I had a job to get done.
Right.
And I was being held accountable for that. And so when I tried to hold other people accountable, that's when I got a lot of pushback, especially being 23 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking to somebody who's 50.
I got sent in when I was 21 to the back rooms of grocery stores. Spent a lot of time in the back room of a grocery store. Have you spent time on
just on Top Chef?
Just on top, so a little bit. There's some wily vets back there.
Yeah, I bet.
And they come in and, hey, you need to find out how we could be more efficient in these back rooms. You got these guys who've been back there 30, 40 years. And I had to sit there. I just show up one day hanging out back on all the pallets of Coke and Pepsi and then, draft up my little report and then come in and tell you again how you're going to do your I mean, that's where I learned more that summer in a lot of ways than almost any job I had, because, again, you're talking to, you're the 20-year-old telling 58-year-old guys who've been back there. And quite honestly, in a lot of cases, they were just screwing up half the time, right?
Well, it doesn't even matter if you package it in an Oreo, right? You've heard that, right? Where you say something really good, and then the meat of the conversation is how you can improve, and then finish with something great. Like, when you're 23 years old,
Who are
it doesn't
you?
matter what
You've been
say.
here for 2 weeks, and it's your not only sweetness, but how obvious the point may be. The other thing that was interesting, just in terms of learning about people, was you'd go into some places, and I mean, it was not a 40-hour a week job, which is quite clearly what they suspected, thus sending me in. But you'd go into some places, and it didn't matter. Kind of your point about wanting to have the extra time. The people who were going to go above and beyond went above and beyond. You go into some places, they were doing all the milk cartons. They had everything organized. The back was clean. They had a methodology that they wouldn't let the guys delivering break. Then you go into another one. This was in Missoula, where the guy we're supposed to check everything before they go on the floor, and he was just waving people through. They were stealing. They were bringing in empty boxes and siphoning off or whatever. But then you'd go to whomever might need a step up, if you will. That's not possible. Like, well, Jim down the streets getting it done, plus 3 other things that I'm not even going to bother to ask you to try to pull off. But no, it was both in how to relate, how to communicate, how to build relationships, pass on difficult messages. I don't know that it ever gets easy, but definitely learn some stuff.
It doesn't. My next job was a whole new set of, obstacles or opportunities, if you will, right?
So you're at Hotel Coronado. At some point, people realize, in the words of Zoolander, how ridiculously good looking you are, and they put you on television. But quickly fill in the steps there. So you're in SoCal. Were you still in SoCal when you got tapped for Top Chef?
Oh yeah, I mean that was almost 10 years later.
Yeah. Okay. So what goes on? So you're at the Hotel Coronado. So you said your next job.
Yeah, left the Hotel del Coronado, joined Hilton Hotels, came on as a sous chef for the entire property.
Still in San Diego?
Still in San Diego, just about 40 miles away. And then, I'm actually the guy who was working at the Hotel Del brought me over there when he took over as executive chef.
Okay.
So he took a pay and or position increase. He gave me a position increase to come over and be his right-hand man. And then he just one day walked off the job. Like, told nobody. Just, I'm done with this. Peace out. And they looked at me and said, can you fill the position until we find a chef? And I said, well, yeah, we'll do whatever I got to do.
Yeah.
And then I spent about 3 weeks doing the job, and I was like, I don't think you guys should find another chef. Let me do this.
So let me stop, if I can, right here. So Angela Duckworth wrote this book called Grit. Have you heard about it? Mm-hmm. So she looked at all. What do you think gave you your grit? Because, I mean, if there's one thing that's jumping off the page, so to speak, about your story already is you've got, and I mean this as a compliment, an edge to you. You've got that grit factor that, as Angela Duckworth, is such a critical, maybe the critical piece between being successful and not being successful. Has it just been something, did you develop that? Is it something you've reflected on at all? Is it something where you're like, oh, I got that from my mom? Like, what gave you that edge to speak up in that moment, to stick out these tough times, to volunteer? I mean, there's example after example that's already popped up of you, quite literally going into the fray when a lot of people wouldn't.
Yeah, I think I probably got majority of it from my mother, right? With my grandfather, nothing was ever good enough, right? It was, what are you going to do next? Oh, cool, good job, bud. You did that. Now, what's your next thing, right? And my mom was really just about me showing up, right, and finishing the job.
Interesting.
But my mom's also the type of individual who was pregnant in the 11th hour with me 10 hours before she gave birth to me, on the floor filing stuff for my grandfather in his car dealership as a finance manager, right? Like, so she always stuck it out.
So she's tough.
She'd get done with a 12-hour workday and come home and make dinner. She always made sure we got to and from our sports things. It didn't matter. We didn't have, we had nannies. We had live-in people that took care of, like, some of that stuff. But she always made time. And she spent every of her penny earned on making sure that we had what we needed. And I don't mean like a new pair of Vans. She made sure I had a snowmobile. Because she was like, we're doing cool stuff together as a family.
Cool.
Right? I mean, we're not backpacking through wherever, but like we're going to go fast.
Gotta spend time together.
Yeah. And so that was our thing. And you know, she just always proved like the hard work that she put in. I don't know specifically where I got it. I mean, I feel like spending time on the farm and working for, I mean, legitimately nothing. When I worked there during the summer, I got no paycheck.
You had some tough jobs.
I just did it, you know, shoveling shit.
Yeah.
You know, changing irrigation pipes, carrying 70-foot poles, you know, getting my butt whooped when I broke a tractor, you know, bucking bales. And then, you know, going in the military. And it wasn't easy, you know, cooking 1,500 omelets every single morning on an aircraft carrier for, you know, the breakfast period.
You're also a little bit of a glutton for punishment, it sounds like.
Yeah. No, I learn every lesson the hard way. And usually it takes 3 or 4 times. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I won't do that again. So, yeah.
So you're at this job. You say, I'm the man for this. And they agree?
They agreed. Well, they... I mean,
hesitate.
They were like, we'll see what you got. We'll give you 90 days to prove yourself.
Sure.
Blah, 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 blah. And then we'll give you a pay increase if we feel that you're the good fit. And in most cases like that, the hotel goes, oh, we can pay him only $50,000 a year. And he'll do the job that somebody that we would pay $77,000 a year. Right? So now I'm the executive chef of a $10 million a year food and beverage program. And the highest position I've ever really held longer than 2 months was chef de partie at the Hotel Del, where I was in charge of like 19 people, right? Now I'm in charge of 50 people, and we have all these different outlets. We have a pool bar. We have banquets. We have 2 restaurants. We have the bar, and then we have the golf course. So I'm supplying all the food for the golf course and for not only the concessions part of it, but, you know, the clubhouse, and then having to feed all of our staff in the cafeteria. And I'm 25. So
I'll stop you again. Something, business, life coaches, business coaches, articles I've read, we'll talk about how you got to just jump at opportunities sometimes, whether you're ready or not, and then bust your ass to figure it out after the fact. Yep. That also seems like something that is part of your story.
Always wear a pair of shoes too big.
Yeah. So you're doing that. So how would you, anything, again, upon reflection, or that if you've taken into these new endeavors where you do this knowingly, I assume you kind of knew like, oh crap, this is maybe more than I'm ready for. Yeah. So what's your mindset, or what's the first few things, again, you think or do to start attacking this new challenge?
I don't know if I was even thinking back then.
Just go.
I want to be a celebrity chef someday.
Okay.
And this is
so
the
that vision
that
had crystallized at some point after you got off the ship, while you're still on the ship. When did that come?
When I was on the ship. So I kind of had this really interesting moment when I was in the military where I had a second where I said, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this isn't really what I want to do. This isn't real cooking. You know, there's nothing glamorous about this. You know, even my recruiter said that I'd spend more time managing a hotel, you know? So there was some false things and you know, I was speaking to my mom. I was on the forecastle of the USS Benfold at 32nd Street in San Diego. And I said, I really think I'm just going to get out. She's like, good luck, right? You're going to break big rocks into little rocks in Leavenworth. Like, no, you're not going to get out. You go AWOL, they'll put you in prison. Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, it's not for me. And she's like, when are you going to stop giving up? And I was like, I don't give up. And she's like, yeah, Chad, you do. Like, you really haven't finished anything, right? You start all these things. Look at all your art. You have like hundreds of books full of like unfinished art. When are you going to get with it? Finish
so this was a pivotal moment then.
Yeah.
Getting called out by someone you respect and looked up to.
Well, and she knew that I would only listen to a little bit of it, sure. Right? And so she said something that was really great.
Put the pieces in bit by bit.
And you know, I kind of add my own flavor to this, but she said something along the lines of, "You're an artist. You love art. What do you put food on?" And I said, "I don't know, white plate." And she goes, "Don't you see, dude? It's a canvas. Paint on it with food." Right? And, I'd like to say the light bulb came on, and it was pretty dim, right? Because I was pretty beat up and frustrated about what was going on. And she followed through and sent me a bunch of cookbooks, right? And they were all cookbooks with just pretty pictures, because she knew I wasn't going to read it. She's like, "You don't have to cook good, tasty food right now. Why don't you just make pretty food? Like, start making paint out of food. Take a yellow pepper and, cook it however, and try to extract the bright yellow of it, and then plate it with some type of meat, and start looking at these things that are in this book." And so she sent me Bobby Flay's Mesa Grill.
Okay.
And back then he was kind of like the chef of like Southwestern food, and he was making all these like bright, vibrant green oils and these bright orange like chili sauces and all this stuff, right? And it was super decorative and artsy and very kind of like avant-garde. And it caught my attention like big time, and I wanted to be Bobby Flay so bad. I was like, I'm gonna be Bobby Flay. Someday I'll be Bobby Flay.
Get him to adopt me.
I will tell you this: any of my chef friends that hear this, they're gonna be like, "F Bobby Flay," because they're like, "He's not a real chef. He's a TV chef, right?" And whatever. He was what got me interested.
Yeah.
Right. My
You don't
mom
get to judge
introducing me
people's
to him.
inspiration.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And still somebody that I absolutely look up to, and it is a goal that's never.
And there's a little bit, I don't care what it seems like that's true of anything, right? Like, we all love our bands, and then they get to be a big band, and they're not our little so-called secret anymore. And then it's like, so you just want these people have to toil in poverty their whole life, like,
right, yeah.
for your own ego about knowing the secret band that nobody else knows. Oh, they're sellouts.
I don't go to this restaurant anymore because they're too busy.
they're too popular. No.
And I was the one that was posting photos all over the place, telling the world about how great it was.
Well, I know you ended up, as I recall, I forget exactly where, but I heard you speak some years ago a little bit about your story traveling through Mexico, picking up some stuff, but they'll spend too much time on. But at some point, then if you can, fast track us to how do you end up being the next sellout celebrity chef on television, like your idol Bobby Flay? How does that happen?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, I got out of corporate hotels, went back into fine dining, and that's when I kind of like really took off and made a name for myself. I owned my first restaurant.
You're still in San Diego.
Still in San Diego. Okay. Didn't leave San Diego until about 3.5, 4 years ago.
Okay.
So let's fast forward 2009, 2010. I get an opportunity to become executive chef and part owner of a restaurant called Sea Rocket Bistro.
Okay.
At that restaurant, I met a fishmonger. That fishmonger said, "Hey, listen, I've got all this scrap food, right? All this parts of the fish that everybody's throwing away. You're a new guy. Nobody knows who you are. Do you want to be creative and play with these things, right? Let's start turning this trash that I throw away into like high quality food." And so he started pointing things out like swordfish bone marrow, black cod liver, broken sea urchin pieces that the people or Japan wasn't buying from them, ribs from black sea bass, the egg sac from cod, the sperm sac from cod, like all these just different, like really unique kind of like out of the box stuff. Taking
that he
swordfish
had reason
belly
to
and doing
believe
something.
Was both edible and might actually taste okay.
Yeah. And he knew that I was this young kid that would take that risk.
Yeah.
And so we started working together side by side, and he would send me product for free and I would test it. And so we were making, swordfish belly pancetta. We were making swordfish spine marrow that we'd put on a salt block with lime. We were making sea urchin ice cream. We were making black cod liver foie gras, like all this just crazy stuff. And then we got recognized by Bizarre Foods, Andrew Zimmern.
Yeah.
And so we were shown an episode of that because we were basically taking private parts of animals and turn it into delicious things, right? Because everything I just listed, besides the spine and the belly, is all private parts.
I wasn't going to say anything, Chad.
No,
but,
it's all right.
None of that made me hop across the table. But
fair enough. But it's delicious, and you would like it if I fed it to you.
Challenge accepted.
So then I started traveling around Mexico a lot, right? And this really helped me also because in Mexico they throw nothing away, right? Okay. So I learned, and the whole idea of me doing all of that really wild seafood was about sustainability. Okay. Let's stop throwing stuff away and let's start utilizing it, right? Like everybody throws away the green tops to carrots or the skins to beets or the stems of cilantro and all these things. Like, why aren't we using this stuff and throwing it away? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, everything can be utilized. And
I'm seeing this challenge with my 10-month-old who throws everything onto the floor, and then you come and make a delicious meal out of everything that's hit the floor.
No problem.
That's a podcast.
That's easy. And you'll also introduce a little bit of bacteria into his life, and he'll
little girl. Yeah.
So then she'll be able to fight off all kinds of,
I'm
ailments.
For it. All right. That's 2 challenges. Okay. We'll keep going.
So I started traveling around Mexico, got to know some great chefs who were featured on Chef's Table, and really humble guys, kind of before all the big TV stuff that was going on.
Remember you mentioned that in the talk, just how welcoming and warm they were and willing to share.
Incredible.
Nobody cared was that unique
or how little I was.
Or is that true of is that true of the culinary arts in general? Are people, everything can be competitive.
Yeah, culinary arts is pretty cutthroat, right? There's a lot of people who, it's very cliquey, right? If you get into this circle of stardom, or like you win a James Beard Award, or you're running with a Star Chef circuit, like all those things, like you run with those people and only those people until that next person is getting publicity on Food and Wine Magazine or Bon Appetit or on Top Chef or whatever, right? Like. So you kind of got to be a part of it. You got to be Division 1 to be hanging out with the Division 1
But
guys.
You didn't necessarily feel that way on your trip through Mexico.
Not at all. Yeah. My first real-time cooking in Mexico, I cooked in a chef competition with 2 very, very well-known celebrity chefs in Baja. And somehow I ended up on their team, and we won, right? And I didn't go and party with them. I partied with my host. And my host was on the team that lost. And that showed a bit of like integrity to him, right? And that goes a huge long distance in Mexico, right? This person welcomed me into their home. They let me cook in their kitchen with them, treated me like family. And instead of me going in and partying with the guys I won with, I said, I'm going to go and
How come you weren't on that guy's team in the first place? Your host.
It was part of this food and wine festival, and so the festival put us where we where we fit in. So then I ended up going on this crazy trip with that same guy that I showed the respect to, and we went from the top of Tijuana down to Cabo, all by motorcycle and truck, down the eastern seaboard, which part of that wasn't even paved when we went down. I mean, it was rough. We had a guy who broke his collarbone on the trip and was medevaced out. We had a guy who broke his ankle, person that took a stingray into the leg. I mean, It was a pretty wild trip. I don't know if you call it like leg heat stroke, but my legs swelled up. So I looked like I had giant cankles. Like, it looked like my quads were at my ankles. Wow. And you could push your finger into it and the hole would stay.
That doesn't sound good.
Right? But I'm like nowhere near, I'm like 600 miles from any kind of like hospital, and I'm with these like nomadic guys that would probably just cut my leg open and take something out that needed to be taken out.
Get some leeches on that.
Yeah. It was a wild experience. But I cooked in all these different villages and learned a lot about the culture and the food and how they do things. And some of it was pretty, some of it I didn't like, and some of it I loved it. And so, with any kind of opportunity, you take bits and pieces that you like, and you take something from that, and you learn your lessons from the things you didn't like, and so on and so forth. And because of that trip, I was able to open a restaurant in Mexico. And that was probably my biggest risk of really all time, because...
Had you left then formally all your gigs in San Diego?
No, it was just add-on. And I met these cool guys, and they wanted to open up a bar, and they wanted to do American food. And I said, no, I want to do Mexican food. And they're like, but you're a white guy cooking in Mexico. And I said, yeah, that's the challenge
but I'm
that I want.
a crazy white guy.
I have French fine dining background. I have an understanding of a very small understanding, but an understanding of the culture, technique. I've worked in enough kitchens down here. I've traveled around Mexico. I'm in love with it. This is what I want to do.
And these were locals that you were having this conversation with.
Yeah. And we opened a restaurant called La Justina on Avenida Revolucion in Tijuana.
Very cool.
Pretty much like cartel
hey
area.
Don't out yourself.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was scary too, because then we'd see things that I
stay quiet
wouldn't
about
want anybody to see
this day for the safety of everyone on the podcast. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But it was really cool, and then I was accepted by the city. I wasn't getting, I thought I would get beat up by it, but they were like, this is a really cool perspective on a really deep, rich cultural dish without showing any disrespect to the culture itself. And that was my motive, and everything was like, hey, I know this isn't, we're not making pozole like your grandmother, but we're going to make a dried pozole tostada that your grandmother would be like, this is pretty good. Like that was our direction. And so I worked with some great chefs down there, and we built this thing out, and the restaurant is better than ever, still to this day.
Still running.
It's
So how many restaurants do you currently part of?
So I'm no longer involved in that restaurant, other than
but it's still
being
running.
Supportive. Like,
Gotcha.
We've changed ownership, and I'm not a part of this new program. Plus, it's Mexico. I really didn't own any of it.
Sure.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right. So I have Craft Pizza Company in the UTC Mall in San Diego, or La Jolla. Still a little bit involved in La Justina in Tijuana. Zona Blanca here in Spokane, Washington, and then we just opened up High Tide Lobster Bar about 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay, if I'm a director of a movie, you guys are the director, but we fast forward. Now we're going to come back.
Cool.
Anything you want to share about your TV experience that
Yeah, I didn't.
The podcasters out there, you didn't want to?
I did
not. That's a good.
I was scared.
Yeah.
Right. I had this huge fear of, okay, at that moment I had 4 restaurants in San Diego.
Okay.
Two of them were doing well. One of them was in Tijuana, and then the third one was failing, like miserably. Almost $1 million restaurant that we built out. I'm cooking the same food from my restaurant in Tijuana, but on the U.S. side, and people are like, this is too expensive for Mexican food. And I'm like, we got people down here that make a quarter of what you make, and they're totally fine paying for the prices down there.
Relatively.
Why is like I'm getting praised for food here, and I cross the border and nobody's liking the food here? And trust me, the people who are eating in my restaurant in Tijuana are not people that are uneducated. Like, they probably, from a net basis, have more money than the people who are dining in my restaurant in San Diego.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the wealthy people are eating in my restaurant. It's not lower class.
Yeah.
And so I was getting just completely annihilated.
That had to be a trip. Yeah.
My publicist was like, you need to go on Top Chef. You need to go on Top Chef. And I'm like, I don't want to go on Top Chef. And they reached out to me 2 years in a row. And I was like, I don't want to do it, because if I go on that show and I F up bad, it's over. Right? People in San Diego are catty. Sorry, San Diego, but you are. They'll stop supporting you because you effed up. On to the next guy, right? The other dude that hasn't failed.
Like the Chargers.
Right?
Chiefs fan?
Yeah. So,
so what made you do it?
It was because my restaurant
was failing. Entrepreneurs,
My restaurant was failing.
Okay.
Shit or get off the pot.
But you had some other ones that were successful, or is it just the one on either side of the border?
The other ones were successful, but I really wasn't retaining any kind of earnings because they were in the very beginning of their build out, right?
Okay.
I mean, still, Craft Pizza doesn't pay me shit.
So this is your go big or go home.
I'm constantly throwing cash at it. You know what I mean? Like, I get a K1 and then I owe money on it, and I'm like, wait, I didn't get any money. What's going on?
Yeah.
So it's like, I had to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I going to continue? Am I going to let this restaurant fail that's failing? Because, once again, if that goes, then they're going to be like, oh, Chad White's done. He's washed up. He had his run. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He might as well move.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like the attitude.
Okay.
And so my publicist, Maria, was like, dude, just go on the show. And so I took the phone call from this gal, and they pretty much walked me through the entire thing. Right up to audition, flew me to L.A., put me up 16 hours of auditioning from meeting with producers, going through a psych eval, medical evaluations, all these just different things. Flew me back to San Diego. In 4 weeks, they said, hey, you're on the show. You ship out on this date. You're going to need 7 weeks off of work minimum. We'll see you in L.A. Here's your ticket. And I was like, wow, well, that's crazy. You had to be very hush-hush about it. I couldn't tell anybody. So we orchestrated this crazy thing that I was going to Mexico City and Guadalajara to scout for new restaurant locations because I was actually looking to open a restaurant in Guadalajara.
Okay.
Because La Justina was doing so well. And I was looking at an investor from Guadalajara who I was in conversation with about investing in Comun, which was dying.
The San Diego one.
Yeah. And if we open one there, because he loved my restaurant, then he would reinvest and help carry the restaurant until it became, net flow positive, right? So went on the show.
Yeah.
And it was crazy, right? I went in a little bit, slightly fearful, slightly cocky, right? Or confident, should I say, because I was the owner of 4 restaurants. I felt like I did majority of it on my own. I was in the right place at the right time. I applied myself. I always put one foot in front of the other and just kept driving forward. And then we're standing in line with everybody. It's the first time seeing them. And people are like rattling off, James Beard Award. I work at 11 Madison Park. I work at Per Se. I work at Boulé. And I'm like, this is why I wasn't going to go on the show. Because
I work in Tijuana.
Yeah. There's just no way.
Were you going to bring the same style from the restaurant on the show?
Training.
Yeah.
I had no real formal training. Everything I learned on the job.
I love it.
The military was very abbreviated from a culinary school basis. Like, I think it spent 6 weeks in a training kitchen. Mm-hmm. Everything else was on the aircraft carrier or the destroyer. Everything I learned in San Diego was on the job. So everything I learned was learning from somebody else. It was like hand-me-downs,
mm-hmm.
right? And then I developed my own style and who I was, and that's what I was being recognized for. But still, it was like, are they going to make me bake something? I don't bake. Like, I don't belong on this show. I'm not good enough. All of a sudden I'm having this terror and I'm sweating. And luckily I held my own. It was a tough season, and everybody that was on that show was, the guy who got kicked off first could have won.
Yeah.
That's how talented every single person on the show. There was a couple people who were a little bit young and immature, but that didn't mean their skill wasn't there.
Right.
It was just, I'm not even kidding you. Anybody could have won but me. I could have won. It's just, how do you adjust the challenge, right? It's not even just about cooking too.
Yeah.
It's about how can you go into this challenge and get through it?
Is that the psych eval portion of them wanting to know that you
I think they just don't want you to murder everybody on the show when
so
Tom tells you.
I was going to say, drama
suck.
On reality television seems like they want a little psychosis.
They want crazy, but they don't want psycho.
Right, yeah. What brings you back to Spokane?
I had my brother-in-law visit me the week I closed my restaurant in San Diego. So I came, being on the show for 7 weeks, I came back to my partners telling me, hey, everything's great, restaurant's doing good. And then a week after they said we're closing. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of a big bomb, guys. Like, you've been telling me this entire time. They're like, well, because we wanted you to win. We didn't want to burden you with this fear while you're on the show. And I only got one phone call with them. So we told you that it was okay, but really we've been losing money every single day since you left. People are like, well, what's he doing running around Mexico? He should be here running his restaurants, right? So there's this negative situation going on. So we closed the restaurant, And my brother-in-law and my sister are in town, and they're visiting, and they're like, you really need to come up and see your mom for her birthday. You haven't been up for a couple of years, and I know you've been working hard and whatnot. And I was just like, shit, I just lost my restaurant. I kind of need to get out of here. And so they flew me up. They bought me plane tickets, flew me up to Spokane for my mother's birthday, which is right around my birthday. And I just showed up at the car dealership, and we hung out, and I made my decision while I was in town that I was going to move back home. And that was November. I flew back November 30th, and I started driving. I packed all my stuff, and I started driving from San Diego to Spokane on December 10th.
You're a man of decision.
Yeah. I was like, nope, this is it. I have to go. And kind of that thing of, am I done in San Diego?
Yeah.
Do I need to go somewhere else? I knew that I needed a mental health kind of like evaluation, right? A self-evaluation, like get away from this rat race, go up, get healthy mentally, and then start what you're going to do next. And I did that. And I opened up Zona Blanca 6 months after I moved here, and it paid all of my lawsuits in San Diego.
How long ago was that?
That was December of 2015 is when I moved up here, and I opened just before June of 2016.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I took a big hit. I mean, when we closed that restaurant, I signed all the personal guarantees on all the food. And here I am, sweat equity shareholder, no skin in the game whatsoever, no cash flow, nothing coming out of any of the rest of my restaurants, and I get sued for over $100,000 for everything that was racked up while I was on Top Chef. They kept buying food and kept buying food and kept buying food. And Zona Blanca paid it all off.
That's another point in the tale of the entrepreneur's journey, the go broke stage.
Yeah.
Ben, came back. This isn't about me, but yeah, came back to Spokane and went through the personal travails, market crashes a few years in, and I think everybody likes the idea of jumping to the end of the tail, but again, these things of risk and taking chances and putting in the overtime and literally getting your teeth kicked in and standing back up. I mean, it just, if you don't want any, not necessarily showing it. I mean, if you're not ready to go through those, then it may not be the game for you. So you just open up High Tide.
Yep.
And Zona Blanca continues to go well.
Zona Blanca is doing great.
Awesome.
We
it's not just for paying off lawsuits anymore. It's actually
now there's a little bit of profit that
there you
goes
go.
into the pocket.
Nice.
That, helps.
That's nice.
Birth new concepts and new ideas and new jobs for people, and it's been really cool. Zona Blanca had that. It was just from day one. We've done really well. I mean, during the wintertime we struggle a little bit because of weather, right? We're a cold fish place. And ceviche itself is not something that's recognized by a lot of people. I think in general, seafood in the city is a bit behind anywhere else because we are so landlocked, and people have this like crazy idea in their mind that if they're not in Seattle, the seafood's not going to be good. And maybe that's because people before us maybe didn't appreciate it or take care of it as well as they should. But like if Vegas can get good seafood, Spokane can get great seafood.
Fair.
Right?
Fair.
If Dubai can get seafood coming from the Bering Sea,
you're not packing it on ships anymore.
So can Spokane. And so
you got me to eat it.
Yeah.
That might be your biggest accomplishment you never knew you had.
I didn't.
I was scared in my own right.
Really?
I came in. I'm not a super adventurous eater, but I came in. Everyone raved about it. Had a great time. Got some of the craft beers. Had any number of different types and played a little shuffleboard and more than once. It's been great.
It's a fun concept, right? And the crazy thing, and people are blown away when I say this, we are the only brick and mortar ceviche bar coast to coast north of Los Angeles.
There you go.
In Spokane, Washington.
I like it.
Like, the risk is there in conception,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the business model was the smartest move I ever made, keeping it counter service, allowing my staff to be able to earn tips.
Mm-hmm.
We make it pretty quick. I think in many cases you can get ceviche almost as fast, if not faster, than you can get beer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just it was a really smart move. I think the neighborhood that we're in has provided a great deal of challenges. One, lack of parking. Two, environment. But
It's a great building.
The building has such great charm, and the building owners, the Battens from Rencorp, they designed the entire thing on their own. They went out and got really cool old furniture and old tables from machine shops and high schools and old ironwork, and just kind of like molded this thing, and they did it all on their own. They hired no design team other than just a standard architect. And they really breathed a lot of really cool life and vibe into that space.
How's High Tide?
High Tide is crazy.
How it's just a few weeks now? Month?
We've been open
2 months?
About 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah. Well, we opened technically March 1st.
Okay.
So we're open 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 11 to 4, or sold out. And it's been it's been bananas.
Cool.
We sold out the first 5 days open. Every single day sold out. And in most cases, we were selling out before even 2 p.m.
For those who haven't been, what's High Tide about?
So High Tide is a New England-style lobster roll bar.
Okay.
And if you haven't been to New England or didn't grow up in New England, they have a hot dog bun that is similar in flavor profile as what our regular hot dog bun would be, but they bake their hot dog buns in a loaf pan, not individually, right? So they stack them all up next to each other, and they bake them, and they kind of mold together like an accordion, right? And then they slice them on the sides, and what that does is exposes the white on either side, and they split down the top versus the side, like what we would do for our hot dog buns.
Sure.
And they shove the hot dog in the top of it. But what that does is allows you to butter the sides and griddle them. And one, it looks cool, and two, the flavor is incredible.
Two, it's butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Butter makes everything better, right? And so in New England, they do the lobster roll like that. So they take this hot dog bun, and they griddle both sides with butter, and then they shove it full of lobster. And we put about 3.4 ounces of lobster in ours, which is, if you figure breaking down a 1 pound lobster, you're tossing, approximately a third of that is shell, right? So you're putting almost a 1 pound lobster inside of a lobster roll. But we are using Maine lobster. We're not using Pacific lobster, right? Or spiny lobster, if you will. Spiny lobster, you pretty much only get tail meat. And the season is very kind of, it's just different, right? You can't fish or trap for spiny lobster during specific times in the year. And you're also not going to find that lobster in the Pacific Northwest. You'll find it from California down to, southern Mexico, right? So we decided to go with Maine lobster, and we only use the knuckle and the claw meat, which is the creme of the creme, right? So you're getting the best of the best, and it's rich, it's sweet, it's flavorful. We toss it in a tarragon mayo, and we are currently selling on Thursday and Friday 2.5 rolls a minute.
What time do I need to get there?
10:40 a.m.
10:40.
Get in line. Line forms at 10:40. We roll the doors up at 11.
I have to send a proxy.
You're pretty close.
I am pretty
You're
close.
pretty close.
I need to make this happen.
And if you want to place an order in advance, you just have to do it before 10 a.m.
Okay.
when people call in between 11 and 2,
what if I know like
our answer is
the boss, like the big man, still called in at 9:45?
Yeah, it's difficult because once we open our doors, we have a line, and the last thing we want to do is have somebody cut the line.
No, I'm joking. Little Bird told me something about potential barbecue restaurant.
Yeah, so
you care to make a
potential
pulling back the curtain announcement here? Of a
This is pretty common knowledge, though.
Okay,
I think you're behind the ball. We've been under.
Mitch is making my note here a little fancy.
Yeah.
I put a link in the. It's in the PDF. Yeah. It's in the article.
Yes.
So it is pretty common.
So
unless you think Chad's not a man of his word, I'd say it's a little bit more than a rumor if it was in the newspaper. Well,
we've been in construction since about November.
Never mind. I see where you're going. Well played.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been building this thing since November.
Okay.
Was when we started construction.
Where is it going to be?
Broke ground. It is going to be in the valley on the corner of Dishmamika and Bowdish.
This is why Mitch cares about it. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, and it's another barbecue place in Spokane, right? We only have so many.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's your barbecue place.
It's my barbecue place.
When do you think you're opening?
We're looking at a June 1 open.
Nice.
That's our target date. I have a big 300-mile bike race in Santa Rosa that's in May, and I have to do this right? Like no matter what. So we postponed the opening till June 1st. It allows us to get everything in and ready and be operationally ready for our guests. We don't want to open the doors and not be ready for people. Our first impressions are everything. So I partnered up with Travis Tosath.
Okay.
He is the owner of TT's Old Iron Brewery, which he got his start for his brewery in our incubator at Zona Blanca. So he's the first person to graduate, and he came to me and said, "Hey, dude, could you help me with putting food in it?" And I said, "Yeah, but I don't want to do this kind of weird thing that we have with Zona Blanca and Steel Barrel where there's like separate transactions. I need it to be one." And so we went back and forth with our lawyers and accountants and things like that. And we decided our best bet was just to partner up. So we partnered 50-50 on the brewery and the barbecue and moved forward. And so we are, right now we have brewery equipment being delivered. We just finished drywalling. We're going to start painting in the next 2 weeks. Our design team is, finishing up some cool stuff. We hired a lighting specialist that's going to be doing some really cool dramatic stuff. Everything is going to be about community out there. We're working with the local high schools and the businesses in the neighborhoods and kind of like just it's like the Cheers of the Valley.
Yeah. Obviously business is hard, whatever your business is, but you touched on something really early that I wanted to come back to, where you talked about food as relationship. What we do, you can go to a lot of places to get food. You can go to a lot of places to get an investment, a stock, a bond, a mutual fund, whatever the case may be. But if it's just about access, that's been so commoditized, right? And so I know when we started this company, again, it was like, how can we, and don't we need to have great, sincere relationships with the people that we're serving to, again, create experience, certainly, from a business aspect, not to be commoditized, but to do our best work. A little bit different in the sense, I guess, you can just, and as you do, as you're known for, have great food. But why does someone who might not be quite as commoditized in the sense that, you can go get a lobster roll, but you're making great lobster rolls. You can go get ceviche south of the Mason-Dixon line, but you still value relationship. It's still important to you, that experience. Why? How do those two things, I mean, this probably be a 45-minute podcast on its own, but real quickly, why is that still valuable to you, and what do you try to drive?
Well, relationship is everything. If anybody thinks they can do it on their own, they're completely foolish. Right? Everything that I do, from the ice cream that I serve in my restaurant, is made by Jennifer the Scoop. Working with local vendors. I mean, even, a company like Cisco and FSA, right? If I don't have an incredible relationship with my rep, I'm going to fail time and time again. My team who is working for me, they have to feel a part of the family, right? This isn't my win. It's our win.
Mm-hmm.
And, the people who have lent me money, it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. It's not like, hey, give me money, I'll pay you back, and we're done. I don't do business like that. Mm-hmm. Everything is about personal relationships. I have a personal relationship with every person that walks through that door. And if I don't, I yearn for it.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get closer to the people that I serve? And, I will not do business with people that I'm not going to meet with face value.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll ever change.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think stay as small as you possibly can with having, I'd say, like, great ambition to do big things.
Right.
But
right.
continue to be as small as you possibly can.
What we talk about on here is just, and again, we didn't create the line, but defend the culture, right? Mm-hmm. Is this going to impact that, so much of what makes this group special is the group. Yeah. Right? And you can't it's just a different thing if suddenly it's, dozens and dozens or hundreds of people. Like, I don't think it would have the same vibe for us here that we have. I mean, and people, I've talked about it before, but the thing that fires me up, we got it just a couple weeks ago again, when someone walks in like, man, everybody here's so friendly. I feel like one person put it I thought at least the most poetic, like, I feel like everybody here's been waiting for me to arrive.
Yeah.
Like that, someone thought that was music to my ears. It's like perfect, right?
Well, and they'll be more likely to make sure that they pay you.
Oh, it's
you know what I mean? Like, I've always said, like, bleed for someone and they'll bleed back for you.
People want to belong to things, and you've got to
stop being afraid of getting screwed. You know what I mean? Yeah, protect yourself whatever way you can, but, like, take that risk. Go all in on people, because the people are what's going to get you from A to B. It's not just yourself. Yeah. You better have the work ethic and the drive to get it done, but if you go all in on your team, they're going to go all in for you.
Well, and vulnerability is inescapable on the path to success, for sure. Yeah. So, Chad, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's it. We're out.